Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, June 6th, 2024. My name is John Pieranunzi, and this is the opening swing. Let's begin today, as we always do, with our news. Looking at Europe, Europe is slightly firmer, about 0.5%. Nothing really important coming out of Europe. A few retail sales numbers, but the big news coming out of Europe is at 8:15. We have the ECB interest rate decision. This is the most important thing happening out of Europe, and potentially the most important thing happening today. So we'll be aware of that 8:15. Then at 8:45 we have our press conference. So that's happening. Also in between that we have that's tomorrow. We have our initial jobless claims at 8:30. This is the most salient U.S. number. We also have international trade and also productivity and costs happening at the 8:30. Happening at 8:30. After that, we have the Nat Gas report at 10:30. A few announcements from Treasury Land, and then 2 short-term auctions. So that's what's happening today. Overall, with NFP tomorrow, which is the big deal. My expectation for today is we'll probably see some activity around the 8:30 hour into the open. Probably maybe a busy. I don't even know if it'll be that busy, but we'll see some activity around the first hour, and then I would generally expect it to kind of start to quiet down, unless there's some new catalyst or one of these releases gives us something new to chew on. But if barring that, I would expect some activity in the morning and then it to quiet down ahead of tomorrow's NFP report. Let's go to some higher time frame charts. We're not going to spend a ton of time on these, but we'll just look at them because it's good to be aware of them. First, looking at our monthly chart, what do we see on the monthly chart? I've been talking about this chart as having been in balance with the skew for higher prices because we're seeing a lot of overlapping bars, but we're showing a willingness to trade the high and defend the low, but still very overlapping. So balance with the skew for higher prices. If we're able to hold above the prior month's high, then I would call that balance, or I would call that price discovery higher. Although when we're in this point, it's fairly academic how we label it, but I'm just noting that there is a strong bullish skew that remains on this time frame. And then going to our weekly, we see that the bullishness has resumed. We had an initial pullback from a new high, which put in a new all-time high. Pulled back pretty much to the expected area, respected the 50% line, and we saw support down here below the 52.12s, 52.16 region, and we've rallied up higher for a new high. So the bullishness has resumed on the weekly time frame, and we're paying attention to this low as our new important low that we expect to be defended. And we're aware that this could potentially become a market structure low as well. Maybe. We'll see how that goes. But key on the monthly chart, bullish skew. Key on the weekly chart, price discovery higher, holding above the prior week's range and accepting. The daily chart reiterates this. On the daily chart, this area, these 575s to 49s, this was a key area where I said, I was looking at this as a fight, tested above, failed below. The area above 33 halves and our 53.24 MCV POC. I was looking at this as resistance. This is where the sellers were. Once we kind of got this indication, and on pushes higher, the sellers showed us that they're still there, and we got the release lower, the test below the 50/50s, and then the resumption higher. And now we've broken above the prior week's high for a new high. So now with this 0575 to 49 area, this was resistance. Now we've pushed through it. I'm looking at this area as support. The first area of support would be, if the bulls are strong, would be above the 49s. If we push into it, then I'm looking for obviously the 33 halves down to the 24s. We'll talk about that on a lower time frame chart. Let's do that now. Look for some structure chart. Here it is. So again, this chart is just kind of reiterating what we've said before. We have this area, yesterday's low, which is right around the 05s, which I've mentioned, and up here the 49s. So this area, this was controlled by the sellers, but the buyers were able to push through. And now I'm looking at this area as resistance, now support. On this time frame, where is the first area of support? It's right here, this blue area, 47 to 52. This is the first area I would expect to be defended on this time frame. You can see an LVN. This profile is basically the May monthly profile carried forward. So I would expect support on any initial retest to the 50 handle. And if we drop back into this area, then I would be expecting support to come in between 25 and 34 in this area. We also have our 2-day VWAP right there. So basically, I would be looking at this area, which was an offer, to have shown us that it's now flip bid, and I would expect support initially. Let's continue to a lower time frame chart here and plan for some specific price action. Okay, here we are on our trigger chart. So yesterday was a pretty good day in the S&P 500. Let's center this for us here. But yesterday was a pretty good day. We got the expected action. We got the reaction right in the expected spot, and we got the extension. So that was fantastic. That happens once or twice out of 5 times. You get exactly what you plan for, and when those days happen, you have to capitalize. Other days, in my experience, like out of 5 days, maybe once or twice you're dead on and you have to capitalize. Maybe once you're dead wrong and you have to just accept it. And the other once or twice during the week, you're kind of right, kind of wrong. That's just how it goes. So you have to be very comfortable with being wrong if you do this, which I am because I'm wrong all the time. And it's not a big deal. Let's talk about what areas are important here. So I've marked this area just as the very initial, basically our developing overnight low, the 60s, and yesterday's VPOC. This area is sort of the initial area of support, and then this is the area that I called out as being a little bit more important if we get this test. Falling below these 49s, and obviously, as I've said, the most important area for me will be the 33s. If we drop through the 33s, then I'll be looking at our MCV POC area, which is right here. Below this area, then we'll take a look at this, what I call the second day high, which is basically the Wednesday high. I would expect some support ahead of this area. I'm not really expecting us to fall into this unless something happens, but we're aware of this. Then we have yesterday's low. Definitely not expecting us below yesterday's low, but it's certainly possible. Above, we have this basically the 75s, which are just an auction, just an option strike price. And then above, there's nothing because it's the all-time high. So these are untraded prices. There's nothing to map out up here except the century mark, which is in confluence with one vol up. But beyond that, there is nothing to go off of up here. FT uses measured moves. I'll use those sometimes, but really, I'm mostly focusing on option strikes every 25 points or so, and then I'm just waiting for price to trade those areas and give us something to go on. But let's discuss the most bullish scenario first, the most bullish scenario. And of course, the most bullish scenario would be just a push from where we're at, which we're seeing that there's clearly, just the way that we've pushed up higher here, there's clearly willing sellers around the 75 strike, and there's also willing buyers above the prior high, which is why we're getting that zipper. So if the buyers win today, what would that look like if they win soundly? If we hold these 60s, well, of course, we kind of know this action. It would probably expect it to kind of push up, take these 75s, fall back, probably hold. FS levels can continue up, take this high. We know how this goes because we talk about this a lot when the S&P is bullish. Just this kind of grind. This is what I would kind of expect, some kind of a grind here, and I'll draw it again. We're always aware of the potential impulsive move that might take out the prior low, fail to get the prior high, and then all of a sudden flip bearish. So I'll mention that again. We're always aware of that possibility happening in that situation. As well, we're aware that this could be a day where we have just kind of a more dramatic repricing early that pushes through the 75s, gives some type of a hold up here where there's absolutely nothing, pulls back, tests it, we figure out that people still want to buy it, and then we continue to the next landmark. And then maybe have some type of grind happen in here. Basically, I've talked about this before. We could get the push and grind early, just kind of a grinding move that takes out the high, or that could become so obvious everyone knows that we're going to go higher, and it just becomes, like I said, a repricing, and then the grind happens at different prices. So basically, what we're looking at here for bullish scenarios is we're looking at either the grind getting higher prices and it being a grind into and around the 75s, or a potential repricing that grinds above the 75s. So those are two bullish ideas that I'm kind of looking at. Neither one of them are that great of trades, I'll be honest with you. Let's discuss some bearish ideas. So if we get any, well, I should continue with a few how bullishness could still happen. If we get a test into this area that holds this low, to me, that would almost be too good to be true. Like if we actually get a nice setup that pushes into this area, shows that it wants to hold this low, and then maybe zippers, or maybe takes the low, reverts higher, then we're above 60s. That would be a great, if we get it like that, that would be fantastic. We get a trade that kind of gives us this test. And then maybe a test, maybe with an open settlement. Settlement is at the 5366s. Maybe this pushes down lower and we get an open settlement. We get a nice setup to trade to target settlement. Then the overnight high, that would be great to get that trade. However, when trades get this obvious, sometimes they don't happen, but we want to flag that if this happens, I would be up for it. As well, I'll basically say get rid of this. So for this area, the 60s and the 49s, these are the two areas where I would be open to any kind of a drop below and then recovery higher, and see the bullishness happen there at the 60s. Let me just get rid of all of this. Or kind of the same thing happen here, like some type of a drop gets below the 49s. Everyone's like, oh, are we going to get sold today? Are we going to get sold? And then a reversion higher. Higher above these 49s, it then continues. So those are the two places where I would say if we get a nice pullback that's tradable, either it would be a push below the 60s that continues higher for settlement in the overnight high, or maybe a push into below the 50s, then reverts above the 50s, and we can trade there for the same prices, maybe target the 60s as scale, and then settlement. So those are kind of the bullish ideas. Maybe we get a grind, maybe we get a repricing and then a grind, or maybe we get one of these pullbacks that we hope are tradable. Okay, alternatively, what would be the bearish case? The bearish case could happen easily with a continuation of this test. Just kind of looks like it's starting to be the grind, but then fails. I would expect that failure to push below settlement, and then that kind of the battle to happen in here around settle. Maybe we think we're going to get it, we don't, but then we get kind of the continued grind down to here. So this would be a bearish scenario where we get the test, fall below settlement to the 60s. It looks like maybe we're getting that pullback that we were talking about, but we can't get the old high. We take the old low, and then we're looking for the 49.50 region. Again, like I said, I would expect support here. So if we get to this price, it's going to be hard to gauge. It's going to, you have to know your setups and look and see, is this going to continue higher, or are we going to do more of this and then just fall? If these 49s, if this area doesn't hold, there's two ways that this could happen if this area doesn't hold. It could be a kind of like a choppy grind lower that kind of just grinds. This is hard to trade. If we get this kind of a grind into like the 33s, this is hard to trade because you don't want to go short, but also you don't want to go long unless you get a nice impulse. So that is a tougher situation to trade, but it could happen down to target. We would be looking at the 33s, like I said, and then the 24s would be the target if we get something like that. We could also get sort of an attempt to do that, an attempt to kind of grind. It looks like it wants to find support, but then sort of gives us a lot of static below above this area where buyers are obviously trying, and then a release lower, an impulsive release lower. That would be more tradable in my opinion if we get kind of what looks like a real attempt to hold and then an impulsive move that kind of breaks that range and continues lower. We have good targets there. We have the prior week's high. We have our MCV POC, or I'm sorry, we have our prior week's high. We have the 33 halves. We have the 24s, which is our MCV POC, and in between all of that, we have 28 to 31 singles. So if we get a drop below 49s, this is the whole area that I would look to target, and I would expect support. Now, if we drop, I'm not expecting us to drop below the 24s today. It could easily happen though. However, if we drop below the 24s, I'm not sure how I could gauge that price action right now. I'm not expecting it. But it could easily happen. If we drop below the 24s, I'll just be looking for probably price action setups. So it's very hard to tell because this area you could see it easily getting very messy and choppy, and then it could resolve either way. I'm really not expecting us to take the prior day's low today. So I'm really not expecting for that to happen, but it could. I'll tell you this though, if we get below the prior day's low, I think it would surprise a lot of people. So I would just be trading zone to zone, and to be honest, we'd have to see some catalyst, I think, for that to happen. It'll probably happen today, since I'm saying that I don't think it's going to happen. But so we have to be prepared. But if we drop below this, I would expect there to be some reason, some impetus, and I would be looking to trade zone to zone. But for me, primarily, the lower bounds of where I'm expecting to see us trade are really the 24s on a vicious pullback. And other than that, I would probably expect us to mostly respect these 49s and have some sort of a grind here ahead of the NFP report. That's what I'm expecting today in the S&Ps. I'm expecting the S&Ps today to probably be not quite as good of a trade as it was yesterday. It might be a little bit murky, so I'm just flagging that is what I'm seeing in the S&Ps. But we could always get another great trade, so we always have to be ready. You never know what you're going to get in the S&P 500 or futures markets as a whole. So I'm going to wrap up the S&Ps here. This is what we got, and I think it was reasonably complete. The general idea is here that we're bullish unless we drop below the 49s, and then if we drop below the 49s, it's like the 24s. Anything above the 24s is likely resistance, with the 33 halves being an important area. The 2-day VWAP will be important today, in my opinion. So that's what I'm thinking for in terms of the S&Ps. If all you care about is the S&Ps, you can turn this off right now because we're going to do something just a little bit different today, and I'm going to mention crude oil. Let's get a crude oil chart ready. And this is going to be super brief because I'm long already and I'm entering a second product. This is a monthly chart of crude. Oops. So crude oil pretty aggressively bearish on the monthly chart, price discovery lower on the monthly time frame. What would be our next target on the monthly time frame? I would be looking around the 72s. Around the 72s, the middle of this sort of balance if we continue lower. But as of right now, we've put in a monthly low and we're kind of retracing. So let's take a look at the weekly here. So the weekly is also pretty bearish. We've broken below the prior week's low, expanded range. We see this kind of area right here around the 76 30s. This is an area where obviously someone was trying to support crude and we fell through, and now we're trying to revert a little higher off of this. Let's take a look at crude on the daily time frame. Okay, this is where it starts to get a bit more interesting. What caught my eye with crude is the way that we dropped lower out of this really clear balance that everybody thought was going to hold. Like this, there's clearly, in my opinion, there's participants in here that are buying this, looking for the reversion higher. Almost got it, but instead we got this just drop, this potential stop run below, and then we had this sort of area form here on this developing weekly profile. This to me looks like support. This looks like support. And so yesterday I was thinking, okay, if we break through this area, which is really around the 74s, if we break through that, then I'm looking for higher prices, probably a 74 handle. We got it already. And now potentially a 75 handle. So really for me, the reason I'm mentioning crude is I'm seeing this as support. And I'm thinking if we hold above this prior settle here, we could see continued upside action. We're already above the prior day's high, and we're showing the ability to accept these prices. So let's, I'm going super long, but we're going to keep talking about crude for just a little bit longer. All right, so here we have a trigger chart of crude oil. Get rid of these. And you can see last night when I kind of started to map this out, I was looking at this area. This pink area is pretty much a really nice area to potentially trade a pullback. I was able to trade that pullback this morning before I got on for the show, and was really looking to target just the full session levels. But as you can see, it's still kind of moving. This red line is a VWAP, anchored VWAP from the highs. But basically what I'm looking for in crude, like I said, we got that pullback lower. I was talking about the 74s. We got that pullback lower. So now for me, I'm just flagging that if this low holds and if we respect these 74s, I'll be looking for higher prices in crude. I'll be looking for a retest of the overnight high. Ideally, we get some kind of a pullback ahead of that. Or if we push through, I'm open to trading the 75.10 to 75.34 band to target this high in this structure. So I'm just noting this today. Don't usually talk about crude, but I think that this is a market that has potential to move in a tradable way today. I like the long side as long as we hold above the 74.07's prior settle, and especially if we're able to take out this high and continue the excursion higher. So I wanted to mention that today, just to show that, you know, the S&Ps are my primary product. That's where I look. I trade the S&Ps more than anything. But however, when the S&Ps start to get a little boring, pushing the all-time highs, I really like crude oil. I think crude auction's great if you're a day trader and you like auction style trading, order flow. I think crude oil is fantastic. So we'll be talking about crude more. I'll get into more detail if people like it and if the S&Ps remain boring. But I'm going to wrap this up today. We're already going tremendously long, but I did want to add in crude. So that's what I got for you today. I hope everyone's having a wonderful morning. I hope that you can improve your trading today. Recognize that if today is not so busy with NFP, it might be best to just be more conservative. Or if today surprises and it's fantastic, then clock those ticks. That's that. I hope everyone has a wonderful morning. I hope that you can also make other people smile today and just spread the happiness that I hope that you are feeling. That's it. I'm going to wrap it up here. I'll see you tomorrow. Good luck today.